This man here is Jeff Turner, the marketing manager at Yamaha UK. Those of us that work as spoiled motorcycle journalists like to refer to him as Uncle Jeff. You can go anywhere in the world with this man and he'll find a good meal and a cold beer. Jeff, we're going to chat about the Niken, which until about 2 minutes ago, I was kind of running it in my head as a bit of a trike. It's a trike. It's definitely not a trike. In terms of our conversation and what we're about to carry on talking about, the way that you've just described that front end to me has got me scratching my head even more than usual, to be honest. Let's start with the name. Niken means something.
Yeah, Niken, Nai is two, Ken is sword. So it's two swords, two blades if you like, and maybe it helps people to understand how it works by thinking of the blades in terms of ski blades and carving down a ski slope. And if you're on one blade, it's going to skip and lose. Two blades, whatever the surface does, that grip gives you confidence.
So the whole point of introducing this very, very unique front end is all about increasing front end grip. As you described earlier, it's the holy grail of motorcycling. And from a software perspective, traction control coming in, slide control, all of those things that bikes like R1M have, looking after the rear is pretty much, it's in the bag now. Front end grip is very, very hard to come by.
Exactly so. Front-end grip you can really only achieve through physics, not electronics. So exactly as you say, the rear end is sorted, everybody knows how that works, we're all used to it, we all take it for granted a little bit, but it's fantastic. Front-end grip is ultimately completely limited by your contact patch. You can't do anything other than increase the contact patch to increase grip. You cannot find an electronic solution. So how do you increase the contact patch? You add another wheel.
You know, it wasn't until we started chatting that I looked and realised that this bike's pretty much on a paddock stand. So I thought that preconceived idea I have in my head of trikes and things with three wheels, that they just stand up on their own. You've just told me that if that stand wasn't there, this bike would fall over in the same way that a normal bike would fall over.
Correct, and this is the really difficult thing for people to kind of understand and get their head around, is that the suspension and the springs and the resistance is in a normal set of forks. So you can kind of look at the bike and imagine what it's like in a straight line. A little bump and the forks are going to soak it up. But the parallelogram system that links the two wheels together and joins it to the frame, there's no resistance, no spring and no damping. So when you sit on the bike, it's only your balance that keeps it upright. There isn't a three-wheeled, it's not like a stool that you sit on. The third wheel acts through the parallelogram as one wheel.
Yeah.
And basically, if you don't put your foot down at a set of lights, like a two-wheeler, you're going to fall over.
It's a lot for me, you can tell there's a lot for me to scratch my head at. There's still a lot of familiar looking things for me. I can see that CP3 motor and I know that kind of from the headstock back, it does pretty much look like a motorcycle as we all know and love them. Aside from, there seems to be more distance between headstock and where my ass would be on this bike, and I'm guessing it's something to do with trying to level out the amount of weight that you've added at the front with the whole parallelogram and everything that's going on up there. That weight balance is being, I think you said earlier, I'm now part of the equation. My body weight is part of the balance of the bike.
Yeah, very often Yamaha are looking for a very neutral 50-50 weight distribution, and that's quite important, especially on a road bike that needs to look, be good in all different conditions and circumstances, two up, etc., etc. So clearly the front end on this is going to weigh some more. It's got 4 fork legs, yep, albeit that they're shorter, yep, and it's got 2 wheels, albeit that they're 15-inch, not 17-inch.
And the parallelogram.
And the parallelogram. Although the parallelogram is part of the chassis weight, really. But to get the 50-50 balance when you have a heavier front end with more components, the obvious thing to do is what they've done, and that's move the rider backwards. Yep. So what you have is you have a longer swing arm with a pullback set of bars. The rider traditionally, in terms of rider-engine relationship, yep, rider's about 2.5 inches further back. And that balance of weight is what neutralises the whole package.
Who do we hope buys this bike? Who's it for?
That's a really interesting question. So what 80% more front grip, because that's what we're talking here, 80% more front grip, it gives you confidence. So you might be a rider who's thinking of leaving motorcycling because you've lost your confidence. Yeah, yeah. You might be a rider where all the roads are horrible and you have not got the excitement and the enjoyment coming out of the ride because of your confidence. You might be a scratcher who just fancies going around the outside of everything.
Who doesn't want more front end grip?
Correct, absolutely. So actually, The market is very broad, and that's why when you look at the bike, you can see, yeah, it's modern styling, and you would expect that with a modern design and a kind of futuristic direction, but it's also kind of sporty. We want sporty riders, touring riders, all-round riders riding this, because they'll all take something from it. But if you look at the spec, CP3 engine, quick shifter, traction control, clearly not designed as a very soft motorcycle. It's got some performance aspect to it.
Has anybody done a wheelie on it yet? How does that work?
John, you're the man for that. Yeah.
I'm not the man. Well, I wouldn't mind trying, but I've seen a few guys on social media getting really, really excited about this bike for multiple reasons. And for me, the idea of having all that extra grip at the front isn't something that I'd considered until I had this conversation with you. I know that CP3 motor is an absolute weapon, and I know that the rest of the bits of this bike that I can recognise from other bikes in your range, in my head I'm still doing wheelies and riding like a bit of a knob on this, but there's all that extra stuff up the front. I'm wondering if one of the development riders, they must have tried to wheelie it. Somebody must have already tried to have a go.
I'm sure it's a motorcycle. It's going to be a load of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got 115 horsepower, and yeah, it's a bit more heavy than an MT-09 or a Tracer, but it's only kind of Super Tenere weight. Yeah. So, you know, John, if you can't wheel it, mate, then you know you're really looking for a new career here.
Thanks very much. Speaking of Super Teneres, I did this really scientific thing earlier, and I'm going to hand you the microphone and hope that these guys can film it, where I took my belt off and measured the width of a Super Tenere from ear to ear, because again, social media, everybody's saying it's too wide, you won't be able to filter on it, it's all the downsides of having a trike and none of the upsides of having a bike. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to climb over the stand.
Yeah, go for it.
It's the second hole on my belt. Let's have a look. And as we said earlier, the wheels are narrower than the bars, so the widest point on this bike is going to be this one. In technical terms, this bike is 3 belt holes narrower than a Super Tenere Yamaha. It's narrower than people think, right? Which, I mean, this is garbage, really. There's no point doing it, but that first impression that lots of people are going to have about this bike is that it won't ride like a bike, and we've just discussed that, and it will. Probably a better version of a bike if you've got all that front-end grip to use. And also the width issue that lots of people are worried about. It's narrower than other bikes that we've got here on the stand. So I'm not really seeing any of the downsides at the minute, and until I break one on the launch trying to do wheelies, for me, it's probably one of the most intriguing and interesting bikes at the entire show. And looking at, again, who was here looking at it today, it's young and old. Everybody's interested in having a look at this bike. Yeah. So I'm just about starting to get my head around the tech. I guess the next question is, how much does it cost and when can we buy one?
That's good. 2 good questions. First of all, availability. This bike you're looking at is not a prototype. It's a pre-production unit. Production starts in the spring. This bike will be in UK showrooms in mid-next year, 2018. In the summer, I guarantee you'll be passed by a Niken somewhere in the world, and it will be on sale. And that's the big thing. This is production, it's coming, it's on its way. I can't give you a figure because it's not set yet, but it must be affordable. And exactly right, we could have put a TFT screen on, but we didn't. We put a standard MT10.
Yeah. And we're going to go over now and have a look at a Tri-City 125, which has a similar version of this front-end design, so that we can get a feel of that balance question. It's not an issue, it's a question, isn't it?
Absolutely.
How does it feel, and why won't this thing stand up on its own?
Let's go.
Let's go and have a look.
Okay, so we're looking at standard forks instead of upside-down forks.
Yep.
Okay, so you can imagine that. So as you hit a little bump, the wheel is going up and down, or as I push the brake, like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Now, parallelogram, as we lean the bike over, is changing the angle of the wheels, okay? But the forks are still working like ordinary forks. But the grip
is massive.
Unbelievable. One finger. And that's 0 friction, 0 damping, 0 springs.
There's a little bit of witchcraft in there as well.
There is a little bit of witchcraft. But the crucial thing is that the suspension is 100% independent to the parallelogram mechanism. So that just goes where you want it to go on the road surface. As you bank it over, it doesn't affect any kind of resistance to the rider.
And Niken will feel exactly the same as this, or the principle is identical.
Is exactly the same. The wheels are a bit bigger and the bearings will be a bit bigger, but it's designed just to react to the rider input.
So any manufacturer, tyre manufacturer out there that does a 15-inch slick, if they don't now, there's probably going to be a gap in the market because you're going to be buying 2 at a time.
15-inch rain tire, now you're talking.
Yeah, I like it. I like it, Jeff. Thanks very much for your time,
No
mate.
problem, thanks.